I was conditioned to believe that any boundary I wanted was a betrayal of her, so I stayed silent, cooperative. Welcome to AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks with guests and returning contributors. The quote that you heard at the start of this episode was that by Jeanette McCurdy from I'm Glad My Mom Died. And every time I either say this title or read it, I do have to let it digest for a second. But I'm almost near the end of this book, and I will shout it out to be one of the most candid nonfiction, memoir, autobiography, journal, whatever you want to call it, books that I've read in a very long time. Absolutely ripping a Band-Aid. And this is also the book of the month for the Kelly and Ramya Book Club. So there's a lot to digest and to unpack with this one, which we will do further on at the end of the book. And at the end of the month, And Nisreen Abdelmajid, our technical producer for this show, was the one who recommended this read. And I don't know how far along she is, but it's a good one. So get on it. Jeanette McCurdy, of course, is the co-star on iCarly, playing Sam. And she was also the star of Sam and Cat. So there you go. Or is it Cat and Sam? Anyways. I think it's Sam and Cat. Let's get into today's episode, starting with the CELA homepage. Taking a glance at the featured titles right at the top of this homepage, celalibrary.ca, Into the Broken Lands by Tanya Huff. This is a fantasy title, which we will get into a little later on in the episode. Spare by the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, is a memoir, and that's also up there. And the last one, Poster Girl by Veronica Roth, and this is a science fiction. On today's episode, we are hitting Know Your Narrator with Sara Hillis, and she's featuring Robin Miles. Robin is a narrator with a passion for reading as well as voicing and training others to voice. So a lot of that mentorship going on. We're going to know her work a little bit more. And like I said, we're hitting pause or play on Into the Broken Lands. This is AMI Audiobook Review. You're tuned into AMI Audiobook Review, the AMI audio podcast where we chat all things audiobooks. This is your weekly episode, and we're going to get into Know Your Narrator, but before we do that, let's bring back pause or play. How exciting. We've glanced over a couple books from the CELA section of featured titles at celalibrary.ca, and we're going to hit pause or play on one of these listens. Would you listen? Would you not? Let's find out. So starting with the synopsis of Into the Broken Lands by Tanya Huff. This is a fantasy title. Let's get into it. From sci-fi and fantasy master Tanya Huff comes a new epic fantasy saga set in a land of dangers and mysteries. Shattered by a mage wars, the Broken Lands will test the bonds of family and friendship, strength and sanity. To save their people, the heirs of Marson have no choice but to enter, trusting their lives and the lives of everything they protect to someone who shouldn't exist, who can't be controlled, and who will challenge everything they believe about themselves. That's it. What a generic synopsis. That's my first impression. Let's go around the table. Nisreen, would you press pause or play on this fantasy?
I would press play, but I would have a lot of questions on it.
But with all those questions, which is literally everything, like who, what, when, where, why, you would still press play.
I would still press play, just a possibility.
Okay.
I'm a bit more curious. There's so many questions unanswered here, but let's give it a chance.
Wow, she is adventurous, folks. And Sarah, how about you? Pause or play on the fantasy title?
I think I would play it. I think that actually, you say it's a general synopsis, and yeah, but it's a great synopsis because it makes you want to know what is going to happen, right? What's this book about? And that's what a synopsis should do. It shouldn't be like, well, here's everything that's going on in the book. It should open the door for you. And so I would press play.
Okay, I mean, I think you guys are being very adventurous because for me, I totally agree. A synopsis should not tell you everything about the book, but definitely a bit more than what I've gotten here, at least for my preference, because there are synopses that after I read, I'm like, well, what's the point of the book now? And then put it away. So, okay. Well, I'm curious if other people would press play. And now, of course, it is getting some traction. That's why it's up there on the 3 feature titles on Sela. Into the Broken Lands by Tanya Huff, fantasy title. CELAlibrary.ca if you want to get it in human narration. Once a month, Sara Hillis features a notable narrator in the world of audiobooks. We call it Know Your Narrator, and we shout out the voices behind our favorite listens. And it's fascinating to get to know their lives, their backgrounds of these individuals. So we bring on Sara Hillis. Now, Sara, today's feature is Robin Miles. So who is this and where did they begin?
Well, Robin Miles is a really awesome narrator. She has this awesome musicality to her voice that works in many different situations. She can adapt her voice to many different situations, which you should be able to do as an audiobook narrator. She's narrated fiction, nonfiction, fantasy, sci-fi, horror, like anything you could almost imagine. She grew up in Matawan, New Jersey, in a neighborhood full of first generation immigrants, and so she heard a lot of different accents, and she hung out with the adults a lot. She was one of those kids like me who preferred listening to the adult conversations and soaking them up and stuff, and so she got to know many different people from many different parts of the world early on. Her own grandfather on her mother's side was a Jamaican professor of Victorian literature. So she didn't read kids' books when she was a kid. She read like really weird Victorian novels that he would give her, and so she grew up looking at books in a bit of a different way than some of us might.
No kidding.
But so she learned a lot about accents, and she really learned to celebrate the diversity that exists in the world through accent, I guess. And she started off dancing. She was in West Side Story when she was a teenager, this kind of stuff. But she really decided that she loved drama more than musical theater, and so she went to Yale for theater, and then the Yale School of Drama for a more detailed master's degree in theater arts or whatever. Then she moved to New York to kind of establish herself as an actor. She played on Law and Order, things like that, one-off kind of performances, that kind of stuff. And one day while she was walking out of a hair salon, having got her hair done, she saw a sign for the Lighthouse for the Blind, and they were looking for narrators, and she kind of thought, well, that's interesting. I'm looking for something to do that's sort of volunteer, community work. And so she actually was rejected the first time she went there, but eventually she got in, and she began her narration with the American Foundation for the Blind and the National Library Services for the Blind.
So she was doing talking books, like as her first gig, right? Because I'm sure that's what it was called.
Yeah, as her first narration gig. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's quite interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and then that led to auditioning for Recorded Books, which was one of the first commercial recording audiobook companies in the States. So this was in the mid-90s. She was mentored very strongly by a really cool narrator that I like too, called Suzanne Torin, and she did volunteer narration as well as commercial narration. And I think she might still be narrating, if I'm not mistaken. And so she got her start that way. One thing Robin did say, was that in the beginning, it was very ethnically segregated. Like if you were Black, you should read books by Black authors. If you were Jewish, you should read Jewish books. I guess they were thinking of trying to go authentic.
Yeah.
But at the same time, actors are actors, she would say. And if an actor, and it's a voice thing, it's not visual. So you don't have to, it's not like you're putting on blackface, for example, if you're white. But if you can do a really good accent you need for the book, then you should be allowed to do it, whatever, because it's voice work, right?
Do you find that kind of thing still exists? I think of, representation in one way, and how now we're definitely recognizing the authenticity behind the representation. But it is another angle to say, like, actors are actors. Voice work is good if you can do it. And she seems to, going back to the accents thing, still do her due diligence, no?
Oh, yeah. She absolutely isn't going to present something that isn't as authentic as she can make it. So, but she thinks this idea is sort of loosening up now, as people are able to do what they're good at doing rather than what their like heritage might suggest they should do, kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a specific story. So how has she taken on accents? Because I think this is a big part of her narration style.
Yeah, I mean, she grew up, as I say, listening to tons of different accents around the world. She has learned about accents via her theater studies, and just studying. She just listens to accents all the time, online or in the street or whatever. She makes a study of it just throughout her life. Certainly for audiobooks, she's prepared certain accents for certain books really, really well. For a book like The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, which is part of the Great Cities series, New York becomes a conscious city, and it has these avatars of the different boroughs and their people. They're just ordinary people that become avatars for these boroughs, and she had to travel. So she decided to travel around New York to the sort of non-touristy parts, as well, and listen to people talk, so she could kind of get the sort of most typical accents for each of the 5 boroughs of New York City and try to make that work, for the audio.
Yeah. I'm always curious about accents. I've tried my own accents here and there, for fun. Even around AMI Audio, there's some projects floating around with some of my British accent attempts. But it's like, you have to really own it, right? Like, you really have to do well at it, or else it just doesn't sound great. And I think that that's a timeless thing to say. And especially if you're talking dialects of potentially the same accent, but, around a city, it's sounding different, or around a state even sounding different.
Yeah, I mean, she's a big proponent of people keeping their regional accent and not just sort of losing it because they've gotten to academia or some highbrow thing. Like she thinks it would be great to have more what you would think of as working class accents in the halls of academia, for example. She thinks that would be great.
And of course that comes back into the character building and all this other stuff, right, which she studies before going in.
Oh yeah, she absolutely she often uses people that she knows as basis for her characters, and that kind of thing. And also she feels that the accent is a way into the character in some books,
right?
So she really gets to know it, and yeah.
Okay. Well, talk about the books, because, I mean, you've said that she's done over 300 books thus far. What about the kind of books she reads? So nonfiction versus fiction, or, does she approach things differently?
Yeah, so for her fiction reading, which she reads she's read a whole bunch of different sorts, as I've said, like fantasy, sci-fi, horror, straight fiction, storytelling, that kind of thing. She basically believes in bringing out the author's words, like embodying the author's voice and the character's voices as much as she can, so she can bring an authenticity of storytelling. She believes that storytelling is a really core part of being human. She believes that audiobooks can bring back what she calls the emotional intelligence of storytelling. And she's an avid audiobook listener, unlike a lot of the other narrators we've heard. She loves audiobooks. She thinks they're great. She supports the industry. For nonfiction, though, she's very much just trying to let the author speak through through her voice. Like she's not trying to shape it. She's just trying to let you hear what the author's trying to do with the tone of how they're presenting the words, because it's nonfiction. So her job is to just support, to be a bit of a support to the author, as opposed to sort of manifesting or embodying the book in audio form as in fiction.
So does that not remind you, like the way she's kind of talking about nonfiction, does that not remind you of things that you hear from audio describers, right? Narrators of audio description who say, like, it's not about me. I'm in the background and I'm helping you understand the story, but I'm not going to put myself in as a character. Or at least these are some of the conversations that I've had where people do the most, they add in the drama. They actually try to stay away from that and be as neutral as possible, or at least when they're conveying emotion, it's the emotion that's already in the scene and not something that they're trying to dramatize out to the audience.
Yeah. I've heard audio describers say that too, and yeah, I think that's exactly it. She has often read books about racism and systemic racism and things in the United States, and she likes to read them, but there are times when it just really gets under her skin, because she's dealt with with racism, and other people in her family have, and so you read a story and it sounds a lot like something you know about, and you just want to yell and scream and freak out, but you need to just stop narrating, she says at that point, and just calm down and just go, all right, I have to read this because I'm being fictional here. So I'm not being. I'm reading the book. I'm not supposed to get emotional here. You're supposed to react to what I'm reading, right? I'm not supposed to
work.
Yeah. So she just she has to get past that sometimes. But
that is very difficult. I'm sure that's way easier said than done, because we do on air, and to imagine having to pace yourself through a conversation because it's not you who's taking center stage, but the guest or whoever, it is much tougher than it feels or seems at first thought. Okay, and then for fiction, she's all in.
Yeah, pretty much. She's all in. She does her best to make the characters distinct from each other and that kind of thing, so you can know who's talking even if there's no said so and so in the text, and that kind of thing. One interesting thing about her, she's also a director. She became a director when she contracted a mysterious autoimmune disease that sort of affected her voice to the point where she couldn't narrate for a couple of years. And so she became a director in 2004, and her directing style is to basically make sure that the narrator is connecting with the listener, and she becomes the listener. And so if she decides they're not connecting, she'll stop them and kind of give them some pointers or that kind of thing, because for her it's all about relationship building. You want to build a relationship with the reader for the time that the book exists.
Did she find value in directing? Like, it sounds like she did it well, but did she particularly enjoy it?
Oh yeah, she thought it was great. She thought it was like one of the best things to happen to her, even given this disease that was problematic for her. The directing gave her a lot of new insight into how to do her own, when she could narrate again, how to do her own work, and she's become a trainer of narrators. She has a school called Voxpertise.
I love that.
And so
it's as you said, because she's an avid audiobook listener herself, that probably catered a lot to how she was going to channel this challenge, right, that she was having for a few years and not being able to narrate. So that's pretty amazing that she found her goal in directing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Somebody gave her a chance to try it, and she took it, and she thought it was great for a few years. And I don't know if she still does it now, but she might sometimes.
But it's the mentorship part of it. I think that it's still part of her learning to be able to mentor other people, train them through it as well. How about her awards? She's won quite a few accolades.
She's won lots. Her first award was in 2002 for Cane River. I think it was an Earphones Award from Audiophile, which, I mean, they give tons of those away every month kind of thing. But she's won some Audies, some Publishers Weekly Awards, and she has been inducted into the Narrators Hall of Fame by Audible in 2017. And she's been in the Best of Audiophile magazine's book lists for many, many different years. Especially the past year, she had a couple on there, I think. So
okay,
she's certainly well respected in the field.
And timeline wise, she got some of these awards before she lost her voice, right?
Yeah, I think the Cane River was 2002, and she lost her voice in 2004.
Yeah. Then she had to
and
come
then
back
thankfully got
after.
it back again, which is good.
Oh my gosh. Years? Like years of not being able to read? That's a long time.
I think a couple of years.
Yeah. That is a very, very long time for anyone involved with their voice. Like, that could be career damaging. But like I said, she channeled it in a different way. Okay, so give us the strokes on like what she's read, what she's either known for, or just to kind of showcase her variety of the books that she's got.
Well, in the last few years, she's known for things like the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. This is urban fantasy. And also The Great Cities by N.K. Jemisin, again, urban fantasy. She's read a Barracoon by Zora Neale Hurston. And I think that had some Creole and other interesting dialects in, so people were really amazed by that book over the years. She's read a book called Caste by Isabella Wilkerson, and that's about racism in America and India. Like, it sort of compares the two and actually says, hey, look, there's a caste system in America too, you know.
Yeah.
And so she's well known for that kind of stuff. And yeah, she just a lot of different genres here and there. I first encountered.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask, your exposure to her.
I first encountered her actually just this past fall in a book by Ian Reid, who's a Canadian horror author, and it's called We Spread. And he writes these really slow burn but short horror novels. They're really atmospheric, and this was about an older woman who was dealing with something crazy going on in her life, and I think Robin Miles did a great job being that character and just working with the novel. It was great.
Is there some technique that you particularly enjoyed that she uses? I know this means you have to kind of step out of being a listener and critique, but was there some technique you enjoyed about her narration?
I think for me, I like her pausing and her pacing. She'll go slow or fast as needed, and she'll put pauses, and you can sort of tell, especially if it's a first person narrative, that the character is sort of maybe not as reliable a narrator as you might think they should be. You can kind of tell there's ambiguities there or things, and just by the pausing, just by the way she pauses, it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you bring to us, right, like every month, somebody to highlight as a narrator, and I often think about when you're listening to audiobooks, how that feels to take in the narration as a performance, because the opposite is to just let them blow you away, right? Let them take you on a ride. But it's something else completely to be like, you know, how is this person doing and what are they actually doing well, and dissect all that. But she seems to do that herself, as we've already highlighted with her, you know, impressive job with mentorship and the training school. There's something that she says about every word being important.
Yeah, she tells her students that every sentence is important. Every word is important. You should never just sort of toss off a sentence like it's nothing, because the author wrote it and it's going to add to the book, whatever kind of book it is. Your reader should, or your listener should never blink, as it were, like as if you're just passing a little tiny town and you blink and you miss it, you know, like it's, even that little town is really important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the note we're going to wrap it up on. Sara, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sara Hillis joining us with Know Your Narrator. Every month you can check out an episode that features Know Your Narrator. Sara Hillis here highlighting some of our favorite narrators, the voices behind our audiobooks, of course. And that wraps our episode for this week, AMI Audiobook Review. You can join us back next week for a fresh new episode with a guest, another avid audiobook listener to come your way. I'm Ramia Amadin, the host of today's show, technical producer Nisreen Abdelmajid, and until next time, happy audiobook listening.